Let me lay out the timeline, because the speed of everything that happened here is itself a red flag. November 30th, 2021. Marcus Lamb, the beloved co-founder of Daystar Television Network, passes away. The ministry and the Lamb family are devastated. Millions of viewers are grieving alongside them. January 27th, 2022, barely 2 months later, Doug Weiss, a Christian psychologist, files for divorce from his wife Lisa. They had been married for 30 years. 30 years of marriage, filed for divorce 2 months after Marcus Lamb died. By May 2022, the divorce is finalized. By August 2022, Joni and Doug have made their relationship official. And then October 2022, reports emerged that a $37,000 resort expense was charged to Daystar's ministry credit card. They weren't even married yet. By May 2023, another trip to the same resort, another charge, this time $60,000 on the ministry's card. June 10th, 2023, Joni and Doug get married. And August 2023, Jonathan and Susie Lamb are fired from Daystar. Church, now let me tell you about something that I believe is one of the most significant parts of this entire story, and it comes from Susie Lamb, Jonathan's wife, Joni's daughter-in-law. Before Doug Weiss came into the picture in a serious way, Susie had a dream.
Until she starts dating this man, and her words, she told me she was swimming one night. I would always go sit with her. I really wanted her to fall in love. I don't want anyone to be lonely. And she said to me, Susie, can you pray for a dream? Because I trust you. And, I'll do what God wants me to do. And with all my heart, I was so happy. I said, God, I don't feel at peace about this man. I'm still trying to figure out what to think of him. And I went home and I asked God for a dream. And I saw a crazy dream. I saw, I'll just say it super quick, but I saw me and Jonathan and this massive green python choking us. And one employee from Daystar that I really love and trust, he loves God. I saw the three of us being squished to death, and she was standing and watching. Now, prior to this, I believe Joni has a gift of she's very convincing. It's a gift, to influence people to the truth.
She has spoken about this dream publicly. In the dream, she saw a massive green python at Daystar, a constrictor, wrapped around the ministry, wrapped around the family, squeezing, suffocating. And in the dream, it was separating people, destroying relationships, bringing division. She said she saw herself, Jonathan, and a trusted Daystar employee being crushed by this snake, and Joni was standing there watching. Susie woke up shaken. She knew this was a warning from God. So she went to Joni, her mother-in-law, the president of Daystar, and she said, Mom, God showed me a python is coming, a deceiver, something that is going to separate this family. We need to pray. We need to be on guard. And you know what Joni said? She dismissed it. She told Susie she was reading it wrong. Because around the same time, Joni's friend Shannon Kelly had a different dream. Shannon's dream said Doug Weiss was the one for Joni, that God was bringing them together, that this marriage would be a blessing. And Joni had to choose which dream to believe. She chose Shannon's dream. She chose the dream that told her what she wanted to hear. She rejected the dream that told her what she needed to hear. Now, let me teach you something here, because this is important. A user in the comments named @1Corinthians 2.2 made a... Now, Susie's dream wasn't the only warning Joni received. Not by a long shot. A woman named...
that Pastor Valerie Hartwell felt compelled to send to Joni Lamb. And she did this very early in the game, before all of this was public. Warnings given. Warnings unheeded. This is the letter of Pastor Valerie Hartwell. Joni, communicating back and forth with you last Thanksgiving 2023, I wrote you widow to widow about my concerns with your sudden marriage. Married 29 years to my husband, senior pastor Roy Hartwell, who passed over...
Denise wrote an open letter to the Lamb family. And this letter is raw. It's honest. And reading it, you feel the genuine concern of someone who loved Joni and watched her change before her eyes. Denise wrote that she met with Joni and was alarmed. It was as if she didn't know her anymore.
Not giving you and your children adequate time to grieve and transition from the loss of their father, grandfather before jumping into a new relationship. As a psychologist, Doug should have known better than to encroach on a grieving family.
She said Joni shared something Doug had said to her that was degrading for a woman of God. But Joni laughed about it. She seemed flattered by it. Denise wrote that flattery is how deception gains access. A man uses flattery to find the weak area in the soul of a woman. And once a woman is under the deception of flattery, she can be manipulated.
Encroach on a grieving family and widow so early. For allowing this to unsavory, ungodly marriage to occur that has fractured your family and Daystar. For allowing this unsavory. You immediately wrote me back telling me not to judge your timeline of grief to mine. What grief, Joni? You barely waited 6 months till Doug's divorce was final to nosedive into this relationship. You with your ally, Tom?
She warned that this was a spiritual attack against Daystar. She said Doug was a wolf in sheep's clothing, that he was of no... Now, I want to share one more warning, because this one comes from a woman who understood Joni's situation personally. Pastor Valerie Hartwell of Jesus Unlimited Church in Washington, D.C. She herself was...
She's got her daughters by the bootstraps.
Literally,
she's got
with no income now.
And she has cut her son and her other grandchildren off to where, how does she know if they even have food? She's just cut them off, Laura. That is so wrong. And I'm telling you, Joni, you are wrong. And I want to say this, Joni.
Widowed, married for 29 years to her husband, Senior Pastor Roy Hartwell, who passed in March 2023. She wrote to Joni, widow to widow, and she did not hold back. She pointed out that Joni barely waited 6 months after Doug's divorce was final before diving into this relationship. She called out Doug directly, saying that as a psychologist, he should have known better than to move in on a grieving widow and her family so early after a devastating loss. She said that was shame on him, but double shame on Joni for allowing it. She also raised something that turned some heads. She mentioned a statement Doug had apparently made publicly, claiming that Jesus died.
All the same
Medications
symptoms, yes.
affect people too, don't
So,
they?
and there are medical issues as well. But these are some of the top reasons why people will be sexless and married, and some of them are very fixable very quickly. Some of them take more work. Some of them take more honesty. But we can all have a great sex life. Christ died so we could have great sex and have a great life. You know, so we don't need to muddle or...
For us to have good sex. And Pastor Valerie said that kind of statement from someone positioning himself as a Christian marriage expert on a global ministry platform would be deeply damaging, especially to survivors of sexual abuse. And then she said something that hit me hard. She said her mother once told her, men come a dime a dozen, but you can never replace your kids. Joni chose Doug over her son, over her grandchildren, over the family legacy. And Pastor Valerie urged Joni to do the right thing. Step back, get healed, and hand Daystar over to Jonathan, its rightful heir.
Now let's go back to Susie's dream for a moment, because everything that dream depicted has apparently come to pass. The dream said the python would separate the family, Jonathan and Susie fired and exiled. The dream said the python would bring deception, questions about Doug's credentials, about his background, about what really happened in his first marriage have been swirling. The dream said the python would constrict the ministry, and major ministries have reportedly left Daystar. The dream said there was a green python, and people have noted that green can represent money, greed, financial takeover. A user on social media named @ElsieColeman6690 put it simply and sharply. Doug wants a job position, not love. And @CarolSwitzer8327 said, it is so obvious Doug is the snake. 187 people liked the comment that called him a wolf in sheep's clothing. And one viewer made a heartbreaking observation. She said she rejected the dream, and now she's gone. Because as many of you may already know, Joni Lamb has since passed away, and the comments section has people asking very hard questions about the circumstances surrounding her death, about who is now in control of Daystar, and about whether the Python has completed its work. I want to be careful here. I am not going to make accusations or speculate beyond what we know, but I will say this. The people who warned Joni, the dreams that were given, the letters that were written, they were not random noise. They were a patter of loving, godly people trying to stop a disaster that they could see coming. And their warnings were ignored.
The comments under these videos are deeply revealing about how the broader Christian community is processing all of this. Sharon Dorff said she felt suspicious of Doug from the very beginning. She said Joni was vulnerable from the loss of Marcus, that Doug came into the picture exactly when she was most lonely. She said she's been watching Daystar for years and doesn't want it to go off the air. God be with this family. Pedro Mas K9U simply said, "Thank you, God, for exposing wolves." 39 people agreed. Esmiel1833 wrote, "What we sow is what we reap. Let's be careful of what we do." 63 people like that one. And honestly, that's the word for today. One commenter, @80sforeverever, offered a more measured take, suggesting that the executive board needs to do a major overhaul of the programming format, similar to what TBN did when Paul and Jan Crouch passed. They said Marcus and Joni are both gone now, and the network as it was is over. Whether a rotation of guest hosts could save it is an open question. And @VijayaNaidu4268 reminded us all, God is the judge, not us. That's right. We discuss, we examine, but we don't condemn. That's God's department. Now here's where I want to bring this home, because this is not just a story about Joni Lamb. This is a story about all of us. How many of us have had a warning come from a trusted friend, from a dream, from that still small voice in our spirit, and we chose to ignore it because it got in the way of something we wanted? How many of us have surrounded ourselves with people who only told us what we wanted to hear and pushed away the ones who told us the truth? The Bible is full of examples of what happens when we reject God's warnings. King Ahab rejected Micaiah's warning and died in battle. The Israelites rejected Jeremiah's warning and spent 70 years in exile. And Joni Lamb rejected the warnings of her daughter-in-law, her friends, her children, and multiple pastors. And the consequences have been devastating. Proverbs 11:14 says, "Where there is no counsel, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety." Joni had counselors. She had people who loved her and begged her to slow down. And she dismissed them all. Let this be a warning to every one of us. When God sends you a warning, whether through a dream, through a friend, through a check in your spirit, don't reject it just because it's inconvenient. Don't dismiss it just because it comes from someone you consider ordinary. Don't silence it just because it challenges what you want. Test it. Pray about it. All right, church. That's what we have for today. This story is still unfolding. There are still questions without answers, and there is a family, a ministry, and millions of viewers who are still processing the fallout. But in the middle of all of it, I pray that truth wins. I pray that Daystar finds its way back to the legacy Marcus and Joni built together in better days. And I pray that Jonathan, Susie, and their children find healing, restoration, and God's perfect plan for their future. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to know. Have you ever had a moment where God warned you and you ignored it? What happened? Let's talk about it. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, stay discerning, stay in the Word, and don't ignore the dream. God bless you all. I'll see you next time.